All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Agent Investor Podcast. I've mentioned, over the course of probably the past 2 months that we've changed the formatting of the show a little bit. We now have three things that we're doing on the podcast. Number one, we're interviewing agent investors from across the country. That's what we've always done. And we take people, it doesn't matter where they're located. And most of those people I've never met before. Then I'm also doing some single individual shows, more kind of like teaching, and it might be like how to do deals with no money, might be how to wholesale deals, and it's just me one-on-one teaching about a tactic or a strategy or a tool. And then the third thing that we're now adding on that we've done a few of in the past couple months is I'm bringing people that I've actually done deals with, that I work with, to talk about really their story, but specifically a little bit focused on how we've worked together and things like that. So I'm bringing on today a guy, Mike LaFavor, who we're in the middle of working on an 88-unit apartment building in Nashua, New Hampshire. We're going to talk a little bit about that deal, as we kind of go on in the show. But we're going to start out like we always do about, his story, how he got into real estate and all that stuff. So Mike, if we can kind of rewind the clock, going back, what kind of even got you interested in being an entrepreneur, being in real estate, and then, what was kind of your few years as an entrepreneur like?
So I think, to be honest, the first day I got dropped off at kindergarten, I absolutely hated school. I was begging my mom to not bring me in there. So I've always been kind of against the institution, structured environments, people telling you what to do. So like naturally at a young age, I feel like the only option is entrepreneurship. That's going to kind of give you that freedom that you want in life. Because other than that, you get out of school, you basically get into a job that's that same structure, that same authority that that I always had that disdain for. So at a young age, I was mowing lawns. I was helping my dad, install HVAC equipment on the weekends. And, I obviously did some odd jobs as a server and bartender and stuff like this. But, I think that it's just something I've always inherently wanted. And I think the main reason was really just being able to do what I want to do.
Yeah, I think that's a common thread amongst all entrepreneurs. And it's funny because when I was in grade school, I hated grade school because it was very regimented. You could sit here at this time, you could say this at this time, you had to raise your hand, you had to do everything. And it's interesting because like we were talking a little bit before you jumped on the show about some of the struggles I had in school and about like being on time and just doing like the simple things that I hated. Once I got into college, I absolutely crushed it because college, although I didn't really love college either, it had the ability to be like, oh, you can make it simple things. You can make your own schedule. You can pick your own course. And it's like, it's just a big change even between, grade school and college. And I think that's just a hallmark thing of entrepreneurs that they just want to kind of, I don't know, be independent, I guess, more than anything else, right?
I'm 100% the same way that you were in college. I don't think I read a book until I got into college, a book that like I wanted to read. Like I would do Cliff Notes. I would do all of these other things in high school just to get past. And when I hit college, I did 3 years of college, 100%. I started reading. I started enjoying the education, picking the classes. Like it's a funny similarity that we have there.
And one of the things that like, I would love to do, I don't know if I'll ever do it in my life, but I would love to have some sort of like entrepreneurship, part to grade school or middle school, because there's so many kids that, are like us that they kind of get left behind a little bit because it's not that they don't like learning or that they don't want to work hard. It's just like school literally wasn't set up for them. And I think it's a minority. Like, I don't know, tell me your opinion on this, but I feel like it's a minority of kids that are like that. And it's like, I think they almost get like misdiagnosed in school that either they're lazy or like they don't want to do the work or maybe they're not good students because they have a lot of energy and they're moving around. I mean, like, what do you think? Do you think that's a minority, or do you think it's more kids that I'm thinking?
I think that school's not set up to go and find people's special powers. Like,
Mm,
I think
yeah.
they're just grind you through whatever federal education that we think is the best thing for you and get out. And now, we have a statistic saying that we have this many diplomas in the country. I think that if we, and something I'm really trying to do with my kids is find out what their special powers are and really try to focus on what makes them great. I mean, how many mechanically inclined people did you know in school that got F's across the board, but they could put an engine together blindfolded,
And
you
and
know? And
and worse than that, Mike, is that in our, like, you're in my age, you're a little younger than me, but in our age group, right? Those people who could do those things, they were actually like, you need to go to college. Like that person that like flunked out of everything, couldn't do schoolwork, or maybe not that they couldn't do it, it's just not what they were good at. Then they were told, hey, you have to go to college to be successful. And then fast forward, right? Like how many laborers, work with us that make a ton of money? Because
yeah,
guess what? Some of those people went to college and they're still not doing the thing that they were kind of like meant to do. It's crazy.
really is.
So, um, so yeah, continue on. So you obviously didn't love school. You had an entrepreneurial bug from a young age, and then like, but did you know real estate, or did you just know like I wanted to run a business?
So I definitely had an interest in real estate. My dad had a friend that was a flipper. I mean, an old school flipper that was doing it in the early '80s, '90s. Kind of that era. And he would stop by and kind of plant those bugs, and we would do work on his projects and change boilers out or whatever at his locations. So I kind of liked his strategy. He would go and buy a house, live in it for 2 years, and then sell it and avoid, the capital gains tax that he would, and he would just keep doing that and doing that. So that really kind of inspired me. And then, my dad was a classic victim of one of those late night kind of infomercials that Dean Graciosi was notorious for in
Hmm.
the, late 90s, early 2000s. So, my dad got one of those books and kind of just threw it at me one day. And like, everybody's got the rich dad, poor dad, where it was like that was their light bulb moment. But for me, it was a Dean Graciosi book. And he really went into all of the different creative ways of how to buy and sell real estate, stuff that is so common now, like, wholesaling and subject to and seller financing, all of those things. Everybody thinks those are shiny new, items in the real estate industry. This stuff's been around for years and years and years. So, I think that's the one book that kind of really sparked my interest in it. But, I didn't jump into it. There was definitely a lag period. I read the book, I got pumped up, but then, I didn't believe that you could do real estate with no money. You
Yep.
know, I just didn't believe it. I couldn't buy into it. And now I've done so many deals without money. It's just like, so foolish to not have given myself that head start.
I know it is one of those, like, I don't even want to call it a limiting belief, because when I think of limiting beliefs, I think of like, someone maybe not having the confidence to do something. It's more than like doing deals with no money is more than a limiting belief, because you really don't think it's even remotely possible. Like it's not one of those things where it's like, oh, if I had a little bit more confidence, I would be able to do it. Like it really sounds like it's impossible until you do it or you see other people that do it. And I spent so much time in agent investor, like talking about no money deals, because you've got to figure out how to do deals with no money, because nobody has enough money to do a lot of deals. Nobody. You could have 2, 3, 4, $5 million. It's not enough. I mean, the one apartment deal that we're working on right now together, like we needed $4 million for that one deal. It's like, okay, if you had $4 million, okay, you could do one deal. So you always need to be, looking for money. So what pushed you over the hump to say, because I went through the same thing. Like I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. You read the book, you're like, oh, I could do all of this. You're ready to run through a wall, and then you're like, oh, I don't know what to do next. So what was the next step for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I got I left college after 3 years and kind of got sucked into the family heating and air conditioning. And, my focus was like, hey, let's build up this business. Let's make this thing great. And we had some great success. I had some great time and learning opportunities, but, that was just not, that was a dead end for me. I didn't feel fulfilled in that line of work. At that same period of time, I got engaged with my wife of now almost going on 10 years this December. And we moved down to Florida, and then we started one of the worst businesses that you could ever get into, which is a food service business. I don't know why I thought that was a good idea. I must have saw some website or webinar that told you, this was the passive way to make money. So we ran that business for a couple of years. And honestly, what really pushed me to it was like, I've tried multiple businesses. You can get rich in anything that you want to do.
Yep.
But real estate, I don't care where you read it, is the number one avenue to create millionaires on the planet. So why am I kind of going against the grain here when, everybody is, in the right kind of line to getting success in real estate?
Yeah. And I had, Tyler Scaglione and Jason Goldfarb from our office on yesterday, and we were talking about one deal that they did. And believe it or not, this is going to sound like a made up number, like for people that aren't in real estate, but this one deal increased both of their net worth by about $1 million. And they did a deal together. They actually assigned a deal to each other. Tyler assigned 16 units to Jason, and Jason assigned a 3-family to Tyler. And between the assignment fees and the built-in equity, $1 million of net worth increase in one deal. And I think for me, the biggest thing about real estate, like you said, you can get net worth in any of these industries. But I think for me, the biggest thing with real estate is just like, most people who do real estate investing become millionaires, whereas most people who run an HVAC business don't. You have to be like top whatever percent of running the HVAC business, or top whatever percent of running a food truck business to get to that, like, 4, 5, 6, $10 million net worth. Whereas in real estate, it's like, to get there, it's just like, okay, it's gonna happen over the course of time. And you can just kind of be like maybe a little bit above average. So the law of averages is just kind of like so much better. So, you had some success in those businesses, and then what ended up being kind of like, I don't know, your first real estate deal, or your thing that pushed you to be like, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah. So my first real estate deal was a new construction build, actually. So it was a vacant lot, kind of outside of a neighborhood that I grew up in. I purchased it for $80,000. I had no idea how to build a new construction house. All the things that went, involved into it.
Yep.
I basically had a blindfold on for, 6 or 7 months, and somehow walked away with about like $60,000 to $70,000 in profit on it. So I thought like, I was, amazing. I could do anything. And then funny enough, I went into 2 deals after that, 2 more new construction deals, 1 single family and then a 3-family development. I lost money on both of those deals after that. So all of the money that I got from that first lucky one, the universe slapped me down and took away way more than what I gained on that first victory. So that really like reset my priorities of like, who am I, an investor or am I a builder? Who am I in this kind of ecosystem of real estate? And, from that moment on, I was like, look, I'm going to be an investor. I'm not going to, yes, I am transactional with fix and flips, and, we buy right and we do things, but, I don't want to have to hunt and have 100 transactions every single day to make money and be wealthy.
And that's been my biggest mistake, is that you do the train. Everyone's different. Everybody has different goals, but my biggest mistakes has always been like, the transactions create like a lot of quick money, and quick money's fun. You made whatever you made on that first deal. You made, I think you said 80,000,
like 70 grand. Yeah.
It's a lot of money, right? So you get that check and you're like, oh, how can I do more of these? But just like every piece of, I look at flipping's active income, right? So it's good active income, but it's still active income where on January 1st, you got to do another transaction. So you realize that probably before me. I guess it takes me a little bit longer to learn than you, but when you decided to be a little bit less transactional, like what was your plan at that point?
It was honestly just time, right? I've got two kids. I've got plans and places that, my wife and I want to go do and see. And, flipping's not an easy business. If they look behind the scenes of your company or
Yep.
my company, what it takes to get these things across the finish line every single time and close is a daunting task. So,
Yeah.
like I caution everybody about, like, again, who do you want to be as a person in real estate? Because if you think you're going to be a flipper and an acquisition specialist and a general contractor and all of these things, like, you need to really prioritize, because you're going to get burnt out and you're going to end up doing, a bad job. So,
Yeah.
um, I mean, we're still flipping. We're trying to kind of systematize and put things on, like kind of cream of the crop type stuff. But, I feel like also, like, you've only got so much attention in a day. And we spoke about this too. Like, if you could spend all of your time focusing on one asset class, if it's multifamily investment or fix and flip, what would you pick? And for me, at this point, it's a no brainer that multifamily, even though you're not getting that immediate,
Yeah.
that
And
that
that's the
quick
problem.
that quick fix that you
Yeah.
get with a flip, it really, it does start adding up quite a bit. Like, we've really developed quite a bit of cash flow annually, that could, really change your mind. So
And that's like the difference between, when people talk about investing, especially when you're new, like I remember not even knowing what is investing. Like there's so many different ways to invest. And typically I look at it now, it's like you're either doing quick turn where you're doing something to a house or a property or whatever, land, and you're dumping it within a year, or you're trying to hold it for the long run. And the most challenging part, like most people go into it being like, oh, I want passive income. But then you buy your first multifamily and it's not enough because your first, I'm just throwing numbers out there, but maybe your first multifamily, you're making 10 grand a year. Well, just guess what? You can't quit your day job on 10 grand a year. You can't, there's a lot of things that you can't do with just one. So, but then, like you're talking about the buildup, you keep doing it. Oh, another 10 grand, another 10 grand, another 10 grand. All of a sudden, and then rents go up and then you get appreciation. So it's like when you really look at it strictly from like a numbers game and you put all the numbers on paper, flipping versus like passive, buy and hold, it's not even comparable. But the problem is in the first few years, the transactional will make you more money on paper, or like actually I shouldn't even say on paper, in your pocket in the beginning. Um
100%, 100%.
so so you made that decision. And so again, another thing that people struggle with, and I struggle with this in the beginning, is like, how did you put together your first few passive income deals? What do they look like? How'd you get the capital and things like that?
So, I mean, I partnered in 2018 with, after the loss of those two new construction deals, with my lifelong friend, similar to yours, with Bill Mendel, Matt Lavery. I grew up, went to kindergarten with. He was my buddy, right next to me, hating school as much as I did as well. So I'm like, hey, dude, like, quit your job. I sold him how great, real estate is. I didn't really let him know how much I was losing on these things, but I'm like, we can get in this, we can crush it. Let's go, let's start go flipping houses. So,
Yep.
we didn't have multifamily investing in our kind of our game plan at first. And the reason being is we didn't want to start off small. We didn't want to get that 3 unit and then another three and then another. So we were always just like, if we got one of those, we would have flipped it. And we did. We flipped a lot of those that we were looking at. We're like, damn, we probably could be getting 2,500 a unit for these. But, what happened for us was, and this is why I love being in the transactional side of the real estate game, is because it gets you involved in deals and it gets you to talk to more sellers and more opportunities. So I had actually my uncle, who is runs a pest control business in the city of Nashua. And he's like, "Hey, Mike, there's like this lady I work for. I've never met her in 5 years, but her properties, she's got about 7 or 8 properties in Nashua, about 40 units, and they're all horrendous. Like if you went to the city of Nashua code enforcement, they were all on like the top 10 of worst properties in the city."
Yeah.
Um, and she was a nightmare of a lady to work with. Like me and Matt had to drive by her house, catch her on her stoop. I jumped out of my car and got her to sign the purchase and sales agreement because she was stringing us along for like 6 months. So we made the decision right there. We're like, okay, this is the opportunity. We got presented a chance to get into multifamily, and we're getting in a decent way where it actually now right from the gate we're going to make some money from this. Whereas you mentioned a moment ago, you're not going to see money on those 3 families until you really start getting a higher unit count.
And that's another thing that you just, again, had foresight on that we made mistakes on, which was like, there's no reason to not go bigger, like out of the gate. And we just didn't. And we didn't have that foresight. We did a lot of small stuff, built it up. And then after we built it up, we're like, oh, maybe we should go bigger.
Yeah.
And we really had no reason to not go bigger out of the gate. So how many units was that?
So that was a 40 unit purchase.
Yeah. That's a crazy like first start. So how did you finance that?
Yeah, so that was 25% occupied. So we purchased this on June 30th, 2021. So like rents were less than 1%, or vacancy was less than 1%, and you're like, how is this 25% occupied? Homeless people, crack, prostitution, everything you can imagine.
Yeah.
So what we did is we brought our bridge lender in that does all of our fix and flips for us. At that point we've done 40 plus fix and flips, so we have great reputation with those guys. We brought them in, we stabilized the units, got rid of all the riffraff, and then we brought in a local bank to cash out refinance, and we got all of our money back, plus I think an additional like 400 or 500 grand in our pocket. So no money in the deal, and another 400 grand that we could go, now pump into the next deal.
And I think, just an important point, and we cover this so much, but the power of what you just said is crazy. And you find an underperforming asset, you get it to perform, you pull your money out and more. And now when you got the 4 to 5 back, that gave you more than you originally put in, right?
Yes.
So that's the other thing that people, like I always say to people, you got to get your first 1 or 2. And maybe on your first 1 or 2, you got to beg, borrow, and steal to get the money, or maybe you have to do like an FHA loan, or however you're getting your first 1 or 2. But especially if you buy discounted and you get it up to snuff, now you're in a position where you're pulling equity from that first or second deal, and you just keep using it as like a piggy bank. So you guys took that 4 or 500. I'm sure the second you got it, your plan wasn't probably to go out and buy a Ferrari. It was probably like, how are you going to get another deal, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Our entire mindset shifted. I mean, I think you had Rod Cleef on your podcast.
Yeah.
So I've been to his event a couple of times too. And, he's one of those big guys of, get 100 plus units, really build like thousands and thousands of units. So like, I was like literally looking down, and like 100 unit in the New England area, it's like, good luck. Nobody has those. Like you guys buying in Texas and Florida and all of these, like those complexes are dime a dozen. Go buy one around here. It's going to be a $75 million complex. That model that he preached down there didn't work too much on like that kind of cash flow, early investor framework. But once we got 40 units in Nashua, we kind of shifted and said, hey, we've got a small base of units here, kind of right in our backyard. Why don't we just develop that? We can leverage and get full-time maintenance guys that can also assist with fix and flips. So we kind of really then went, full tilt on developing our New Hampshire base, right here in the state of NH.
Yeah. And, you've said a few different things. And I think one thing that's important to note, I mean, I did say a minute ago, like, hey, you can go big out of the gate and you should try to go bigger out of the gate. I do agree with that. But some of the stuff that you did, it was a buildup. So I guess I don't want to say correct myself, but I want to make sure that people know that, like, even though you went 40 units into your first deal, your first passive income deal, you mentioned something like, well, I already had the lending relationships because of the fix and flips. So it's like everything does add up. And Trevor Mock, who owns carrot.com, one of the biggest really real estate investor website, he said something to me. He's in my age range and he's very successful. And I was on his podcast and he said something to me that always stuck with me. And he talks about, like, building his business and, like, laying bricks. And he talks about the fact that, like, if you lay bricks every single day, one day you're going to have, like, a crazy big house. But, like, as you're, like, laying them down, you don't think anything of them. And, like, you just said something like, hey, I could go to my lender because of all those other bricks that you built, right? So somebody else might not have necessarily had maybe as easy of a time going to that lender. And you also said something else that your experience with flipping was part of too, which is, like, you went into a 40 unit and it didn't sound like you getting it, like, renovated was an issue, right? It sounded like you just kind of, like, glossed over getting 40 units up to snuff. But that was probably because of the bricks that you laid with doing the rehabs before, right?
Yeah, and honestly, our buying criteria right now for any other multifamily is honestly significant value add because stuff right now isn't cash flowing and rates are higher. Our money right now, we're not trying to have money sit in deals for decades. So
Yeah.
if we're not able to cash out, refinance, get into another deal, it's like we kind of have to pass. And I completely agree with, like, the laying bricks thing. So that's why, like, everybody that's out there, on the edge of getting into real estate investment, whether it's flipping or not, like, if I wasn't involved in it for the last couple of years, my uncle wouldn't have known. He wouldn't
Yeah.
have given me a tip, and that none of this stuff would have happened. We wouldn't have known how to rehab the properties. We would have been intimidated and scared. So it's just like, get going. There's so many people out there. There's so much resource, available to you to really walk you through a lot and avoid mistakes that you've made, I've made. It's all out there, but, like, get in it because opportunity is passing you by every day that you're unaware of.
Yeah. And even those, like, those bricks there, I mean, the definition of the brick is really just a small step, like a small something that, like, it ends up adding up to a lot more. Because even, I mean, I do want to talk about Nashua and I want to talk about apartments in general. But, like, I'm even just thinking about, like, we had a point where we had to, like, get bridge financing on that and we had to get that done fairly quick. And I remember thinking in my head, like, Bill got that done pretty well, pretty fast. And I remember thinking, like, I bet a lot of people couldn't have done that. And it's because he's had so many banking relationships in the past. And we're, just small things, like, we're bankable. Like, most small investors, like, they're not bankable. They don't have balance sheets. They don't have P&Ls. They don't have, a CFO, all that good stuff. So it's like, it definitely all builds upon each other. But now getting back into, like, so you got the 40 units. And then after that, were you thinking in your head already, like, I want to do more than 40 units, or what were you thinking after that point?
Yeah, after that point, I think we wanted, like, thousands of units. It's just like, if we can do 40, we could do 40,000. It's really not different. If you're gonna turn a bedroom, it's gonna have a sink, it's gonna have flooring, paint, carpet. It's all the same. It's just you're gonna add a multiplier to it. That's the beauty, is that it doesn't get more complicated. It gets
Yeah,
easier. So, which is what is amazing about this.
I know we've probably had this conversation, me and you, plus me and Bill, plus me and Jim separately 50 times, where it's crazy. It's easier to renovate 100 units than it is to fix and flip a really hard single family. And that shouldn't be the case at all. Um, I mean, well, what would you give apples to apples, right? 88 units that, you're managing the renovation in Nashua. How many single family fix and flips would you equate that to? I know this is a weird question, but I'm just trying to give people kind of a sense.
I
Like,
mean,
would
the
you
amount of,
rather flip 10 houses or manage that 88 unit? Just work wise.
I mean, work wise, all day long. I mean, I don't really have to show up on that project too often.
Yeah.
Can 10 flips, that is a full-time job for 6 months, times 10 properties. That's more than a full-time job. That's 80 plus hours a week of just burning things down to the bone to get those things done. So I would say managing larger asset classes with competent, workers on site is way easier to handle.
So, what we did, and part of our story was we bought all these 2 to 6 unit buildings, and a few years ago, Bill said to me, he's like, "Do you want our kids inheriting these properties?" And I really thought about it. That was the first time that ever came into my head. Never had that thought before because we own a bunch of multifamilies, all in really tough areas. And this is where, you talked about other parts of the country where New England is really different. We have such tight inventory that the cash flow for multifamilies, small multifamilies, you got to be in the tough areas. And you mentioned kind of like the different things that you inherited when you got those 40 units. I mean, we could tell stories all day long about like tough people to manage. So it was at that moment, and it was a weird thing because it was kind of a split second decision. We were like, let's just sell them all and go bigger. And we had built those all up over probably like a 5-year period. And then all of a sudden we were just like, okay, let's get rid of them. And we started building 100-unit new construction in Millis, Mass, and we've got the 19 unit in Wakefield that we're almost done with. And then at some point, like a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, you came to us, with the Nashua deal. So how did you find the Nashua deal? Like, why did you want to bring us into the deal? And what got you excited about it?
Yeah, so Nashua deal was the Henry Hangar building, which I've driven by thousands of times in my life. It's an iconic mill building that always manufactured, clothes hangers. So in 2018, I remember somebody finally buying the building and was like, "Oh, that'd be great. Let's see what they're going to do with it." Couple of years go by, and I'm scanning Craigslist, and it's a for sale by owner. This guy's trying to sell a mill building. So I'm like, all right, that's kind of a weird thing for Craigslist. Usually you're looking for, a fix and flip or something like that. So I called the guy immediately. He answered the phone, and little did I know that I was talking to a very, very sophisticated investor.
Mhm.
And his MO was going in and buying unentitled property, so property that's not approved for anything yet. Very cheap. He buys them in as is condition, and then he'll go in to the city, get it approved for multifamily housing, and then go resell it for a substantial profit. So that's what he does, and he's very successful at doing it.
Yeah, that's
So
that's the one thing Bill won't let me do.
yeah,
No matter what, he's like, we're not buying anything that's not permitted. Never.
yeah. So that's the. I mean, there's definitely properties that this guy's sitting on that he's lost money on.
Yeah.
So, it's a major gamble, but I feel that this guy specifically is so stubborn, and like nothing's going to stop him in the world of getting what he wants. But I think it was $3.6 million. It was for 80 units, and it only came with 66 parking spaces. So. And this was one of the guys that you would talk to and say, okay, hey, I'm going to need a 90-day due diligence period. Then we'll close 30 days after that. And he's like, I'm going to give you a 30-day due diligence period, and you're going to close 30 days after that. And I'm like, but I need 90. He's like, I don't think you understand me. You need to, like, you're getting 30 days. So I was like, what the heck? So he, kind of steamrolled us on the elements of the deal and what we needed to. So we had a short fuse to close this. I didn't have $3.6 million. I've had a relationship with you and Bill, and I knew the volume that Cameron and Ocean City does, and I was like, let me call them up. They'd be a great partner in this deal. And then you guys, it seemed like we kind of just met up at the exact right time with the alignment of where we
Yeah.
wanted to go with multifamily. And, we were able to put the deal together. And I know you said it like Bill just took care of the financing on this. Bill made some miracles happen, just to get that thing done on like the final hour as well. Like we went through like 5 or 6 different kind of people to make this work. So, he really did some heavy lifting on that and, pull through big.
But what I kind of meant by it, I probably said it wrong. What I meant more was that, like, again, going back to the building the brick analogy, he didn't have those relationships just out of thin air, and he didn't know how to do it out of thin air. Like, if you had given me that same exact task, I would have failed at it. I would have, because I wouldn't have known what to do. And it's like, again, he only knew how to do that because that's not his first time figuring out how to get a deal to the finish line capital wise. And I don't even, the crazy thing is, it's going to sound really bad. I'm not even sure. I don't know how he did it. Like, literally, all I know is that, like, every like couple of weeks is like, oh, I'm getting nervous about this. Like, and he probably expressed that to you as well. Like, but he did end up pulling it out. And yeah, well, it's crazy because that guy, it's tough when you don't have leverage. I mean, we're used to like dealing with leverage. We usually have the leverage. And, when somebody just has, we don't usually deal with sellers whose net worth dwarfs us. And so when it's the opposite, it's like that guy probably would have been just as happy to take our deposit and do something else.
Well, he was notorious. So all the commercial brokers know him for that. Like, a lot of them actually have this guy on their blacklist because they don't want to deal with a transaction with him. But I don't know. I looked at this like, hey, it's in my hometown. It's going to be an amazing finished mill building. They aren't making more of them. They're a hot commodity, throughout New England. Like, can I take it on the chin a little bit to go and put an 88 unit apartment complex into our portfolio? Because again, one of those things happens, like, building a muscle, once you do that 88 unit, now it's like, so you're going to think everything else after that is so much easier. So,
and that's with everything. That's with everything. It doesn't matter what you're doing, whether you're selling, you're listing your first house, you're working with your first buyer client, you flip, you do a small, once you do anything once, then it's weird. It's just how we are as humans. Like, once we do it once, even if it was like super hard the first time, the second time it's easy.
Yeah. And like, I just wanted to be in the gym flexing that muscle because even if it, even we lost or left a little money on the table, I want to be able to have that skill set to go out there and crush larger apartment complexes.
Yeah, it's crazy. But what we found is those deals when you can do the heavy construction, they're just so much more profitable. And we're going to have basically like new construction quality in a nice city with big cash flow. I mean, on the P&L, just so people can get an idea, like, interest rates are going to fluctuate and whatnot, but like, what should that deal kind of net out, like, once it gets up and running, roughly?
I mean, after everything, debt service and all that stuff paid, I mean, we were projecting like $500,000 to $650,000
Yeah.
after all expenses paid, and that's also factoring us getting all of our money back out of the deal as well too. So
one thing that I want to point out about apartments, because since we started doing apartments, obviously I'm posting pictures and people are seeing that we're doing these deals. One thing that I learned about apartments that's just so important for people that are listening and they're like, oh, I want to maybe do an apartment deal, but I don't know how, or I don't have the money. What I've found with apartments, it's usually not one person involved. Yes, maybe there are some like super high net worth people that can do these deals by themselves. But if you kind of look at the structure of an apartment deal, Mike in this case was the deal finder. And as the deal finder, and he's going to be project managing the deal. So he brought two major skill sets to the table on this one. He's in on this deal. I was lucky enough that, we were able to put, a good degree of capital into the deal, not all of the capital, but a good degree of capital. But then in the end, we ended up raising capital into this. We put our money in, but then we pulled it back out. So now in this deal, we have 10 to 15 capital partners that are getting the benefit of what apartments give. They're getting a great rate of return for just being in this deal completely passively, just by having money, no construction expertise. They didn't have to find the deal, right? We had to provide the capital. Mike had to find the deal. Mike had to manage the project. We're helping Mike to some extent with the management of the project. But my whole point of this is like, if you want to get into apartments, you don't need all the skill sets. Like if you're going to fix and flip a house, unfortunately, you need to have all the skill sets. Like you do a single family, you're not going to partner with 10 people on a single family. So if you fix and flip a house, you need to find the deal, you need to fund the deal, you need to manage the construction, you need to sell the deal. But if you're going into an apartment deal, you only really need like one of those skill sets. If you have money, you can be in the deal. If you can raise money, you can be in the deal. If you can find a property, you can be in the deal. If you can manage the construction, you can be in the deal. And sometimes even the property managers are in the deal. So there's so many more areas that you could be like a piece on these. And it's just if you have good skills in any of those areas, like you can grow your portfolio. You don't need to have every single one of those skills.
And there's a piece in that, where the buck doesn't just stop with you on everything. Like you can rely on a teammate to kind of step in and help out where his area of expertise is. So like, that's the beauty of being on a team, is that you just got a bunch of great people that you sought out, that are better and smarter than you at so many other things, that, are with you on a common goal about making money in real estate. So like, there's such a serenity in having teammates that are with you along the ride.
It's huge. And I've been lucky enough to like have that kind of almost from day one, with Bill and Bill's dad, but the team keeps growing. So, what it's allowed, me to do is, my roles and responsibilities, they keep shrinking.
Mhm.
So I'm still spending the same amount of time in my business working, but I'm working on more of a narrow focus, which allows me to get a lot better at the things that I need to be good at. Because in the beginning I was the one listing the houses and I was the one going on the appointments, and it's like, as time goes on and you build, not everybody wants to build a business like that, but if you do want to build a business, I mean, I'm fortunate enough that if next week I go on vacation, there's no part of my business that's not going to operate, right? I always, as a control freak and a business owner, always think if I'm there, it's going to be better. And maybe that's true to some extent, but when I go away, it still runs, right? Because I have all competent people. Again, biggest thing, with all kind of the same goals. So that project is what, like, it's a little bit over a year away from being completed.
Yeah.
People ask me for updates all the time. I'm like, I still haven't been there yet.
I know, that's wild.
I do. You know what I want to do though? I want to do like a bus tour there. And I was talking to Bill and Jim about this the other day, and they're like, well, I don't know if it would be, that great at this condition, but at some point I want to try to do like a bus tour and get a bunch of people there, because I think it would be a cool project. That'll probably be the first time I visit it, but
you'll have to rent a couple hundred hard hats. The GC will probably kick everybody's butt if they're not wearing them on that project.
That's what they said. They were like, this is not like the traditional like single family fix and flip that we can have like 90% done and people can just walk through it like casually. So I still want to do it. We got to figure out a way to kind of make that happen. So a little bit more about apartments though, like, for people that are listening and they're interested in them, like what advice would you give to somebody who maybe hasn't done a ton on the investing side, but they do want to, like, they know they want to do apartments? What advice would you give to somebody that's in that position?
So I'd say three things. The first thing is set a high bar for yourself. So don't go in and say, I just want 10 units. Tell yourself that you could go get 100, 200, 300, 400 units and really believe that you can do that. That's what I did with myself. And it's again, don't be intimidated by a bigger, more audacious goal. The second thing I would do is start getting in networking and Facebook groups and talking to people that are out there doing it. We're in an age where you can go connect with people all over the world that, you don't know. You could just be in a group where this guy that's just posted something has 16,000 units and you can get free advice from him, or he's a guy that you could go bring a deal to. So get onto networking groups. And then another thing is, brokers are kind of the bell of the ball in multifamily. So,
Yeah.
go on to LoopNet, go on to Crexy, find the market that you want to get into and get the list of all the top producing brokers and send them an email and say, hey, I'm an investor. I'd like to get on your mailing list. And, whether you can't afford these properties or you can't take them down, you're going to start getting your inbox flooded with deals that are coming to market. You're going to start getting pro formas. You're going to start getting T12s, all of the financial information that comes with the sale package. So now I remember Robert Kiyosaki would say these things where he would just go through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of deals and, hope to only get, 1 to 3 of the offers accepted.
Yeah.
Sharpen the axe before you go out there and commit on that first deal. And the only way you're going to do that is by actually looking at deals, because a lot of these deals that brokers are going to send you, they don't pass the stress test.
Yeah.
So you can say this isn't a deal when you're able to do that, your confidence level really is increased. So those are the 3 things I would say for a new investor to run out there to get their confidence level where it should be.
Yeah. And I think also going back to the building brick kind of analogy, it's it's going to take you a while to probably do your first deal, but that doesn't mean that you can't put in work every single day. Right. And so what Mike's talking about, looking at all those deals and analyzing them and contacting brokers, no, that's not going to get you a deal. And I think it's a weird thing. I think this is just a fact in life. The more that you can delay gratification, typically the better you do, in the end. And it's yes, the sale of a house is probably the easiest thing to do, but you're only going to make $8,000, right? Then flipping a house, maybe you make 50, and that's pretty quick, gratification too, but it's much longer than, listing or working with the buyer. Then buying a small multifamily, okay, that's going to be much longer delayed gratification, where maybe that takes a few years for that to be a great investment. And apartments are probably even a tiny bit longer. So it's as long as you can be patient and always make some progress every single day, you're going to get there. And for most people, it's hard because the progress that you make in the beginning isn't financial progress, it's educational progress. And that's why there's a saying in real estate, the more you learn, the more you earn. And it can be really frustrating, especially if you're a go-getting entrepreneur, to be patient and to learn first. But for those of you who feel like you're not educated enough, that's really where our inner circle program, that's where all of the podcasts, everything that we do kind of fits in. All of the content that we give for free is great, but the inner circle really takes it to another level, because that's when we actually have the ability to partner with you or analyze your deals or have one-on-one conversations with you. Because all of this stuff is good. You can listen to me and Mike talk right now, and I guarantee you took some nuggets away. But then how it applies to your individual situation is the hard part, because everybody's at a different point in their life, different age, different capital resources, different backgrounds, different goals. And that's really where the inner circle kind of comes into play, which is our coaching program. For those of you who have not signed up for a call yet, all you need to do is go to www.agentinvestorinnercircle.com. And what we do is it's basically a free strategy session where we'll talk to you, we'll analyze your situation, and we'll give you a bunch of to-dos on that call. And that's kind of a taste of what it's like to be in the inner circle. If you want to take it to the next level, that's when we would talk about actually joining. And there's 3 ways that you can get into the inner circle, and 2 of them are free. So even if you don't have capital and you're an agent, we can work with you. We want to help as many people as we possibly can. And even like, Mike's story, I know Mike told us at our last event, but um, Mike came through a funnel just like how, you guys are listening right now. And he was thinking, or maybe he heard about my coaching program. And I just said, dude, join my brokerage. Like, I'll help you if you just join my brokerage. And, I never would have thought 4 years later that we'd be working on an apartment building together. But that's just how this stuff kind of happens. And honestly, I don't know who got the better of that deal. Because right now I wouldn't be working on that 88 unit without Mike. And, maybe vice versa, because maybe Mike wasn't, capable of pulling it off that day. So it's just truly like, win-win when we can work together with people. And especially if you're in New England, you can join coaching programs that are like in other parts of the country. We're different here. We really are. Like, we have different properties. We have different ways of doing business than other parts of the country. A lot of the stuff is the similar all across the country, but that 10 or 15% that's a little bit different is different enough that, in my opinion, if you're in New England, this is much more of a no-brainer for you. We can help people in anywhere, but like, there are specific things about New England that make this a little bit more challenging. So what are your goals now, Mike? Like, you obviously want to keep doing apartments. Like, where do you want to go with the apartments?
Yeah, so I mean, we've got, again, a big goal that's set for us. We want to hit 10,000 units in the next three to 4 years. And I think our shift from that is, we built a pretty solid base of kind of buying everything ourselves, cashing out, getting our money back. But I think our big shift now is really going to get into what we did together on this 88 unit building, which is raising capital, bringing people in the deal, and then really having a solid team go out and execute these things. So, that's where we're at. We'd like to be 10,000 units in the next 3 to 4 years. Our fix and flip business, we'd like to keep that, right around like 40 flips a year, but have that on autopilot. I don't want to think too much about that business. I like the deals and the opportunities to get brought to us by it, but it's definitely not our 100% focus for our 3 to 5 year plan.
Yeah, same here. We talked about this. I don't know if I even told you this or not. I might have, I might not have, but this is the first year that we've ever gone into a year saying our goal is to do less flips than the year before.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd say that. But it's because we want to do more apartments. So, we want to have, kind of like you're talking about, like a controlled fix and flip business, because really that's my job, right? At this point, like, I don't even define that as investing. That's my job. That's how I get paid. That's how I get cut a check every week. But that's not really what I was after in the beginning. So like, that's the other thing related to fixing and flipping, is like, if you make good income already, whether you have a job or you're an agent or whatever, like, you don't need to flip houses. Like, to me, flipping houses is just like active income. Focus more on the long-term passive stuff. And you don't even need to, if you have capital, you don't even need to be finding deals. Like, you can make a ton of money by just investing, passively. So that's another thing that I kind of wish that I knew when I was a CPA and I was like on a partner track, and I would have made great money I wouldn't have liked it, but I could have made great money as a CPA and just invested passively. So if you've got capital, that's another way to kind of, get into apartments or earn passive income that's completely stress-free. Cool. So last thing I want to ask you, because obviously this is the Agent Investor podcast, how has being an agent kind of helped you along with your investing goals, and how have you kind of like combined the two to some extent?
I'd say immensely. And the reason I say that is similar to what I just mentioned about getting on all those broker lists and sharpening your axe with getting familiar with all the documents necessary with those deals. When you're an agent, doesn't matter, you're going to, Keller Williams, whatever, every one of these brokerages offers free training to their agents. So it's a free crash course on how to put real estate deals together and get deals closed. So when you're an agent, you're going through, like, just imagine you came across a 40-unit apartment building, but you've never put a purchase and sales agreement together. So I look at being an agent like, hey, yeah, it is transactional income. Yeah, you do get some gratification from that, but the skills and negotiations, contracts, all of the software necessary with it was fundamental to take you to the next level of going to flips and going to multifamily. So, like, I'm still a major proponent to say, get your license. It's cheap. The test is cheap. There's nothing crazy. You don't really have to spend much money to hang your hat with a brokerage. Free education. It's like, it's kind of a no-brainer to be associated with, the realtor association or just a real estate salesperson.
Yeah. And, continuing on with the brick analogy, by being an agent, whether you even know it or not, you're adding bricks to being an investor, right? You're learning how to comp properties. You're looking how to network with other agents. You're doing a lot of the things. And that's really where the whole agent investor concept came out of, where it's like every agent should invest. Right. And one of the main reasons is you've got half the skill set. You've laid half the bricks just by being an agent. So, all right, Mike. Well, I know you got a busy rest of the day, I'm sure. I want to thank you for jumping on, and I'm sure we'll catch up, at some point later this week to talk more about the deals we're working on. But thank you for coming on. And guys, we'll be back again with another episode of the Agent Investor Podcast next week. Thank you for